Welcome to the latest edition of Access All Areas Backstage podcast. I'm behind the scenes and under a beautiful canopy of trees here at the BST Hyde Park with Jim King, AEG CEO of European Festivals. Thanks for having me, Jim.
No problem. Good to see it.
It's another beautiful day. Luckily enough, we've got a bit of shade.
Yeah, it's one of the few places with a tree, I think. Yeah.
So there's so much things to kind of go through. Obviously, we celebrated or marked your 30th year's motor with featuring Access All Areas fairly recently, or last year. And there's a lot obviously to go through. But I wanted to ask a really kind of obvious question in a way, just about how you got into this industry, because clearly, you've been involved in so many events, Festival, Creamfields, Rock, M.I.C.E, obviously BST, All Points East, etc., etc. Was there a moment when you kind of fell in love with festivals or fell in love with live events?
Well, I fell in love with live music probably when I was about 16, get involved in the sort of acid house raves and the club scene really around that time, around electronic music. So that was, 1988. So that was a kind of pivotal moment, if you like, where I was kind of like blown away. And I think I've said it before, where, I begged my brother to take me to Seine at the Astoria at Tottenham Court Road there, where it was a club night called Seine, which was promoted and DJ'd by Pete Toll, from Radio 1 and, well, at the time, Radio 11, I think. But anyway, it was just a real eye opener for me, and, just seeing that energy, and, I love the music itself as well. So that kind of just got me the bug for going out, and I really wanted to go out and listen to live music, and certainly around the DJ side of things. So that was, I think, a real pivotal moment. And then I went to Liverpool, and I started promoting shows when I was at school after that. So
how old was that? 15 or
16? Yeah, between 16 and sort of 17, 18. So I went to Liverpool University or Liverpool Business School when I was in 1990, and I'd already promoted a few shows. I wanted to be making music, playing music, and just being involved. And I think, like most promoters, when you realize, or most promoters are either failed musicians or failed DJs, or not failed, but never any good at it in the first place. And I kind of fitted both those descriptions. So it was the ability just to be involved in some way, in something which I had a real passion for. And then going to Liverpool, and I met James Barton at that time, and a couple of years after that, he started Cream with Darren Hughes, and I started working with them. So that was my first kind of structured involvement, if you like, but still going out and going to Hacienda and seeing all my heroes at that time, and Graham Park and Mike Pickering, Sasha, those types of those DJs. So I really came through, but always a love of, all genres of music. But it really kind of elevated from there. And then Cream, just took off like a rocket, and just became this massive brand. And, we were running events all the way around the world. And, and that was hugely exciting for me, actually seeing the physical, putting events on, physically putting them together. We were doing, a couple hundred shows a year in South America and Asia and, Australia and everywhere. And, so it really just kind of like grew very quickly from there. And then it was, I guess, the festival part of it. We ran a DJ agency as well, Darren and I, which had all of the, big American DJs at that time. We were sort of representing them when they first came in to play Cream, and we'd, sell the shows on as well, agent the shows on. And, sort of DJ Pierre and Roger Sanchez and DJ Sneak and, Armin van Helden and Felix the House Cat and so on and so on and so on. And through that, I booked some artists. I booked Roger Sanchez and DJ Sneak into Tribal Gathering, and that was the first time I'd been to that. And that kind of blew me away, because it was the kind of electronic music thing on scale, which I hadn't really seen before. We'd done like arena shows, but nothing of outdoor and nothing of that type. And I'd been going to Ibiza for years, since 1988, and all of those huge, Coup, which is, I think now Universe, but back then was 8,000-9,000 people out, with in the open air. So I'd always been involved on events of like real scale, but nothing that required this level of infrastructure. And so I saw that, and it was just by chance, really. I think that was 1996, maybe 1997. And it was that year that we then got asked as Cream to partner with the Mean Fiddler to do the first ever Creamfields, which took place at the Matinee Bowl 1998. And it was very much a Mean Fiddler production. We were, booked the artist, and we, across the marketing, but they ran it. Melvin ran it. That was the first time I'd met Melvin and Vince Power.
Yeah.
And seeing the show was again like another continuation, if you like, their journey from Tribal Gathering. So it was, unbelievably exciting, but also frustrating to not be doing it. Kind of like watching someone else do that, but just really see the, I don't know, like say the bits you would never normally see about how you put an event of that scale on in the middle of a field with no infrastructure being there. And that kind of captured my imagination. And I really got interested in that side of it, the real production as well as the event management side of it. And that relationship didn't continue after that first year. And we ran the first ever Creamfields on our own in Liverpool at the old airfield. So that was the first show of scale that I'd ever put together, with a very good team of people, I should point out. I mean, I wasn't doing it all on my own. I was, certainly the weakest link in the chain of the management team. But it was when I kind of was responsible for everything and seeing that. So that was when it's kind of that window there, and I kind of never looked back from that point going, okay, this is what I really want to do.
When you were at Creamfields and you were looking around and seeing all the infrastructure, and was there a sort of epiphany moment, that sort of...
Well, there's two. There's the best bit and the worst bit of it, which is the best bit when you're walking around seeing it all completed, which I was doing on the morning of the show, thinking, oh, wow, sort of patting ourselves on the back. We've done a great job here. And there's loads of toilets over there, and there's a big fence, and there's all of these big tents and big sound systems, and, all of this other elements of infrastructure and production that we've put together, and feeling, but we've done a really good job here, and forgetting the fact that, there's no one in there yet. And then, like I say, I think I've said before, 35,000 people turned up, and it was horrifying, just to be responsible for that number of people. And then you really see the skill of what it takes to put those shows at that scale on. It's not working on your own or with a team, just building something, it's actually running it. And there's a huge difference between the two. They both are very difficult, and there's different people working here, have different responsibilities for building the show and then running it. But the running of it and the responsibility of the vast numbers of people, and then seeing, and you get to understand how the layout, how the show, and then the narrative the show needs to work to maximize the enjoyment for fans and for the artists who are playing. And it's that bit, really. I always say to the people who work with me, it's understanding that bit. You can visualize a side plan, you can put a show together, but you've got to look at it from a fan perspective and from an artist perspective, from how their engagement needs to be, rather, for them to enjoy it as well. And that connection between the artists to be doing the best possible performance that they can, because you've helped facilitate that, and the fans to be able to receive it in the way that they want. Not at 80%, and it was okay, wasn't as good as the last time I saw them. It needs to be attaining, wow, that was the best I've ever seen them.
Yeah.
And that's the skill. Everyone's still, who's still involved. I've been doing this, 30 years or so. And I'm sure people have been doing it for longer than I have, are still saying that's what they still set out to try and achieve every time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was around at that time after Creamfields, and when you went alone with Creamfields, that you set up, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was around that time that you set up Loud Sound, which then rebranded into Ellis Events, which obviously is responsible for the production side of this lovely event, and also, everything that you're doing with AEG Presents in terms of Lido, All Points East, and obviously Roundhay, which we'll come on to later, but the new Leeds event that you've done. So, I mean, can you just talk us through a little bit about how that whole, moving into that side of things, setting up your own production business kind of happened?
Loved being at Cream. It was, without that, I wouldn't be where I am today. I still have a great, passion for what Scott's still doing now. Scott, Scott and I used to work together. He used to work for me when he started out. He's now running it. I still love, the fact that that's one of the biggest festivals in the world. So, I have a great affection for all things Cream and Creamfields, but it became limiting for me. I was only doing that one show and I wanted to do more. So that was really the only reason. And I needed to leave to still run Creamfields. I still ran it for James and Scott for many years after that, until they sold it to Live Nation. And but it allowed me to go on and do Festival, Rockness, LED Festival, Field Day, and work for other people, originating shows myself as well, which, LED Festival was, which I did with James, Rockness, which I did with Fatboy Slim and Joe Gibbs. But then, trying to realize other people's ambitions as well, which is how the festival thing started. And, Ben Turner asked me, I've known for very many, many years.
Yeah.
And he was managing Rob DeBank, and he asked I take a meeting with Rob, and because Rob had a night to do a festival. And this was in a window when everybody wanted to do a festival as well. And I don't mean that in a demeaning way. There was a big expansion of festivals. It was great for the industry at that point. And Rob and Josie, his wife, are real creatives, and certainly at that time, probably the most creative people I'd worked with, in that space. And they had amazing ideas, but no real practical way at that time to make them, make that vision a reality. And that's where I came in. I learned a great deal from that, because I'd never actually worked with anybody that creative before. Sure. And the challenges of going, okay, pulling out a crumpled piece of paper with a few drawings on it and going, okay, I think we might need to do this differently, but I think we can do it. Yeah. And do that. And that was a really great experience, the years I worked there. And some of the best shows I ever worked with, for sure. There was a moment when, there was a moment when Cream was without doubt the best nightclub in the world, and I'd say that because all the DJs and the best DJs in the world played it, and from Junior Vasquez to Roger Sanchez to Frankie Knuckles, Paul Oakenfold, Pete Tong, and everybody in between. And it was universally known as that. I think there was a window when Festival was, certainly the best show in the UK for me, because it had that great boutique feel about it. It wasn't the scale, very different from, not trying to draw a comparison with Glastonbury or Reading or any of those others, because it sat on its own, I think, in many, many ways. So anyway, that was a great platform for me then to pivot again and go, okay, well, I want to do even bigger shows than this, more complicated shows than this, and, and just be more ambitious.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just thinking there about, the balance between, you're now, obviously you own Ellis Events, you've got all that experience in production, and obviously, you're extremely senior with AEG Presents as the promoter side of things. So you've kind of got a foot in both camps in a way. But I was kind of thinking about there where you were talking about Festival, and around that time, I believe, you did Rockness as well, if I remember
That's
rightly.
right, yeah.
Which was, having been to that, was just obviously blown away by the location. It's an incredible location. How important do you feel that, like, there's a sort of there's a sort of patchwork thing, isn't there, with a festival, with a successful event, where you get the beautiful venue, you get the great production, and you get the right promoters with the right artists and everything else. And it's about pulling it together. And certain events, like obviously Festival back then did it, and Rockness was just, it's just a beautiful sight. I'm just thinking about your perspective really on how important sites are in terms of not just the practicalities of them being a flat site that's easily accessible, but the sort of beauty and how you kind of work with that natural elements to make the best of it.
Well, I think any event producer will say, you want a great site, because I mean, one of the things which we set out to achieve in all the events that we do is to combat that homogenous kind of approach, which I think was a real problem for the industry, where you could walk into so many shows and they'd look exactly the same. You kind of, after 2 or 3 drinks, you might think you're at the one you were at the week before, if you weren't too careful. So, same staging, same set, site layout, same F&B operations, same ticketing, same everything, and I really, as an independent at that time, felt it was, one, I passionately believed it was the right thing to do, but it also allowed us to set ourselves apart. Like every festival you went to was different from the previous ones. You'd never see that at another show. And I think I wanted to take that into all of the clients that I was working with. So the Rockness, and going back to Coachella, I went to Coachella in the second Coachella, which was 2001, and almost by accident, I just met Paul Tillett. He'd come to meet us because he heard, he was a big Anglophile and knew about Cream, and he came to meet me and James when we were in Los Angeles. And we were in Los Angeles to go to a Chemical Brothers show. He was promoting it. I didn't even know that. And we were friends with Tom and Ed. And we met him, and he came to our hotel and he invited us to the show. We said, well, we're going anywhere. We're going to Tom. And he said, oh, great. How long are you staying for? I'm doing a show out, Palm Springs. And we were like, what's it called? And he said, oh, it's called Coachella. And we had never heard of it. I didn't even realize where Palm Springs was in relation to Los Angeles at that time, I don't think. Anyway, we went down there and I was, again, just blown away by this event site. And, I think what Paul, the fact that show's been going since 1999, it's still going, it just shows what an incredible, event producer and creative he is and the team that he has around him. Because every time you go to that show, it blows me away, every single time. And that's, to your point there, is because he has this amazing foundation, this landscape, which is natural habitat, and he doesn't mess it up. Okay. He adds to it and puts all of these elements here. So you're just making it better and better and better. And I think that's a great skill if you can do it, because some people will go and mess it up.
Yeah.
And it's almost a bit less is more. And, you have those big impactful moments on top of something which is just naturally impactful already. And that's why I think, the way that the stages work there and the way that the art installations work, and they're big pieces. There's not that many of them, but the ones that are there, like, blow your mind, and because they stand out, they have space and oxygen to breathe for then to be this moment that you see them. So I think sites are, a major part of what we do. No different from, people who go to Glastonbury and walk around the different spaces. They have their own energy and their own vibe and their own creativity around that, because it's just a beautiful, magical place. So I think, being here was one of those elements. It's a big space, but there are very, beautiful parts of the event site, but we're in one of, I think the most, for me, it's one of the most beautiful event sites in the world, not just because of the area that we're using, but its surrounding spaces. We're in the heart of London, which is, for me, the most important music city in the world as well. So you've got all of those different layers coming together. And I think that then brings a different energy for people come here to enjoy it. So it's great history going back to the Stones in 69 and everybody in between then. So I think sites are, I wouldn't say they're everything, but they're a really important part of it. Rocknest was the same.
Yeah.
When David Levy with Gary Blackburn called me and said, we've got this site that we've been asked to look at to do a Norman show, Fatboy Slim show. We need someone who can help put it together. Would you go and see it? And I was at the time really busy. And it's not, back then, it wasn't straightforward to get to Inverness. It was a commitment to go like that week.
Yeah.
And coming through from Inverness and you going along the Dawes Road and you just, it's obviously an incredibly beautiful place, Scotland anyway. But then you got through that last turn off if you've been,
Yeah.
and then it just opens up onto the field there on the lock. And I was like, I didn't even get out of the car, and I said, okay, I'm doing it. I mean, we hadn't even parked up yet. It was just spellbinding,
Yeah.
So I think that's, and I think Roundhay's like that. One of the most exciting. I'd never been to Roundhay, heard so much about it, all those great shows that took place. I was too young to go to those shows in the 80s. From Springsteen and Madonna and U2 and Michael Jackson and everybody, but you arrive there and it just, as an event producer, you just get that thing happens where you go, wow, okay, I could, maybe if we do it this way and you're just thinking about ideas straight away. It's not like, okay, I'm going to go back and 5 or 6 visits and stuff. You're already hit with this unbelievably naturally beautiful environment, and obviously it's got that fantastic natural amphitheater that works there. That you're just trying to add to it. This first year just went so well for us. We're so happy with it, but already going, okay, that's going to work better if it's there, and that's going to work better if it's there, and people will be able to get round easier and have a better time if we do it that way. And the artists coming in and performing if we just make these small tweaks. But it's tweaks. I mean, we're still tweaking this since 2013.
Yeah.
Because there's always something which you feel you can do better with it. But yeah, but we're very blessed. I've been very blessed to work on some amazing sites.
I mean, obviously with this one, I wanted to obviously get onto the obvious question really about the stage with the Great Oak stage. I mean, I think we talked about it before, but there is that. It's one thing having a great site, but it's knowing how to really work within it without kind of abusing it, but kind of enhancing it, I guess, really. And now this event has that great reputation, but the stage is kind of so synonymous with it. You talk about Coachella and that backdrop it has there. You talk about, I guess Green Man on a much smaller scale, but it's got the Black Mountains behind it. Obviously Glastonbury. Here you've got these gorgeous old, many hundreds of years old oak trees, and you kind of walk in and through that, through that kind of walkway, and then straight you can see turn around and you see the stage with that amazing as Devlin design, and obviously LS of Star Lives kind of built stage. But it's a big statement piece, isn't it? I mean, was that always part of your vision back in, was it 2012 when you first?
2012 was when we first started thinking about it, when we knew the contract was coming up. And I mean, I live not far, so I walk across the playground when our offices were in Green Park. I used to walk across it twice a day.
Yeah.
And you just mentioned the long tree line that goes down Park Lane, and the traditional position of the stage where it went as well. And we moved that around quite a lot to assist with a better sound plan, what have you. But its position was largely, that south end of the playground. And I'd already come into this thinking that I wanted iconic parts of the festival that were only known and you'd only see them here. And there was a bespoke feel about it. So when you walked into BST, you'd never seen the elements of infrastructure which we have, certainly the creative any other show, and to create an element of excitement and individuality that which fans would get them excited about. And so the Great Oak Stage, I always think the best festivals in the world have amazing stages which are part of the fabric of the show. So that's where the Great Oak came from, and I sketched it out, and we wanted it to see like it was going to disappear in that long line of trees and its positioning there. So, and I literally just sketched it out, and I still have the early sketchbooks from doing all this stuff. Actually, I found them recently, and sat down with Roger Barrett from Star Live, or Star Event at the time, now Star Live, and we went to China. And we went to China just because we needed to find the infrastructure and have it built, and it was the cheapest place to go and do it. And Roger had an office there, and it was coming back from there that I got introduced by people who were working on the creative side, which was Larmac, to Ez. They were working with Ez Devlin on something else. They said you should meet Ez, and I thank them every day for that introduction, because what was, I still thought it looked great what we had. Then I realized I'm not a set designer, or and she's the best in the world for me, and she took that and then made it her own. And so that's really where it developed from that. So we had like big screens and all those elements there. We wanted to have that vision of what you would, to take away the elements of, of a stage, if you like. And with Ez, we developed that into that full wrap of screen, which no one had done at that time.
Brilliant stuff. I mean, you've come a long way since, was it 2013, the first event, which obviously had the Stones come back for the first time since '69. That was a pretty big landmark event, obviously. And, it started with 6 shows, it's now 9 shows. You've just had the capacity increase to, I believe, just one short of 70,000.
Right, yeah.
For each of the 9 shows. So when you came out of COVID, you put so much work into kind of invigorating the entire site setup, the whole production. What's the next step? Is there room for another big ambitious stride forward with BST?
Oh, I think so. We're always, it's timing. There's lots of things that we want to do. You've got to do them in the right order and at the right time so they land the best possible way. I think we're constantly evolving the creative here. There's elements we're not going to change just because they work. The stage is always going to be there because we've improved the sound so much here. I mean, when we first took this over, most bands were playing like 95, 96 dB, and wasn't really fit for purpose, or it was being called not fit for purpose by the artistic community, and very openly as well. If you remember the license review in 2012,
yeah,
we're not telling anybody to turn it down now. They're playing at the level which they want to play. But people playing 102, 103 dB last weekend, and we're still with headroom. They don't want to play any louder than that. They're fine with that. And we've had 5 noise complaints
Wow.
across 5 shows so far.
So how's that been achieved without being too technical?
Because we've spent a lot of money and a lot of time, and we never let up on it. We're always improving it. It's these 1%, isn't it? How do we improve everything we do, by a trackable amount every single time we do it? Last year's good enough isn't good enough next year, and we have to keep improving that. And we challenged our supply chain to go on that journey with us. That's why most of the suppliers you see here have worked with me for over 20 years. I've very rarely changed suppliers. And that's because they're part of what we do. And they're tasked with making it better. They're charged with that. We mentioned Star. Most of from the entrance arches you see rather, from the grandstand, from the Great Oak stage itself, from the birdcage stage, the rainbow stage. Nearly all of these were little hand-drawn sketches at some point, which I've either sat down with Roger originally, or Gav, or Pete Holditch, or any of their key guys over the last however many years, 14, 15 years now. And they go away and they go, okay, I can do it this way. We do it this way. What do you think? And we'll work through it. Same thing with Mark Ward, who's been with us forever, forever on the main stage, to figure out ways which this is better every single year. And I think the audio just is one part of that.
One aspect I wanted to kind of touch on there that leads from that, getting the noise pollution down to the absolute minimum, so the community aren't. I'm sure most of the community are desperate to be here, but in terms of that whole consideration of working alongside local authorities and working alongside local communities, we've obviously seen some kind of fairly high-profile instances where there's been sort of legal action threatened and taken, and it's not been the best PR for some promoters. It's been difficult situations. You not only here at BST, but obviously over in Victoria Park, done a lot of work in terms of kind of creating these really quite impressive standout, free to attend events for the local community, whether it's kind of dance or classical music, or had Mo Farah doing was it a 5K run or 3K run the other day?
I think it was 3, yeah. But anyway,
it's kind of pretty impressive stuff. So I mean, that whole how much work and effort kind of goes into kind of creating that program, and is a room? I mean, and how has that always been the kind of ambition, really, to make sure that this works on 2 levels?
Working with community stakeholder groups and building relationship is the backbone, really, of any event. If you want to come back, if you've got ambitions to be there for a while, certainly it's our approach. Whether others follow that's for them to decide, but it's certainly our approach. We want to be well liked. We want to be seen as the preferred operator, even to those who frankly do not want us to be here. As I've said to many people, I'm a professional. I'm being paid to be here. I'm going to be here anyway. So what I would like to do is get a level of understanding and build a respectful relationship with you. That when I say either myself or our team are going to do something, we will actually do it and build relationship equity that way. So that's always the way that we've approached it, and I think we've built fantastic relationships here, but no different from in Tower Hamlets with London Borough Tower Hamlets Council as well. So, and that's been the same since I was doing Creamfields, and that was a tough sell-in to community, doing a 6 a.m. finish, electronic music show, 50,000 people. So
yeah,
you learn your way around it. You learn but you more importantly, you learn the value of it and learn the importance of it. So I think it's been a bedrock, really, foundation rather, of everything we've ever set out to achieve on every single event. And the midweek events you talk about there is exactly that. And that again came from me walking here, across here all the time, and have to, this, as residents will call it, that, bloody great big green fence goes up and we can't walk the way we want to walk, and we've got to walk around it. And I get that. It used to piss me off, and it's like, and it's, there's also no reason. I always thought there's no reason for it. Sites sitting there empty.
Yeah.
And it's just annoying everybody. So why don't we actually make this part of the event, and make the midweek part of the event, and make it appealing to people who frankly don't want to come and see the Rolling Stones, whether they should or shouldn't, or Bon Jovi, or Kylie Minogue, or or whoever else is, Taylor Swift, or whoever else is playing, but they really want to come down here with their kids, or they want to come down with their parents, and they want to watch open air cinema for free, or they, want to engage with all things orchestral, and something else which is, connects with them a little bit more strongly, and feel that they are part of this event and this journey. And just because they don't like what's taking place on a Friday night, or it's not to their liking or to their preference, they still have a relationship with this event. They still have a BST Hyde Park relationship. And I think when you can build that and you can multi-layer your offering to a wider stakeholder group, I think you're always on a much, stronger foothold to build a better relationship generally.
Yeah. Okay. And obviously, we're sort of we've got one more weekend left of the actual main shows. How's it gone so far? I mean, it's you've got a really interesting kind of slightly different lineup of artists to previous years, in that, you haven't got the sort of Rolling Stones or Bruce Springsteen. You've got maybe slightly younger artists, a real sort of apart from Duran Duran maybe, but you've got a real mix of different genres, different kind of style of artists. What's the kind of ticket sales been like, and what's the sort of general sort of from your perspective, the success of the event so far been?
Well, it's been an incredible year. I mean, but since COVID, they're all incredible year. It came back so strongly. I mean, the market did generally is across touring and across festivals in that first year. This has never looked back though. Here, I think that more people are just, it's their day out. It's the one for many people, not everybody, but for many people, it's the one or two major outdoor events their music events which they'll come to. So there's a great fan loyalty from that. And this year's no different. It's been a tougher booking year, there's no question about that. But I think that gives opportunities for others who might not normally, when you're doing 2 Adeles and 2 Springsteens and 2 Pinks and 2 Rolling Stones and Elton John and Eagles and Taylor Swift, and it's not everybody gets a look in at that point, and it allows more artists who deserve the opportunity to play here. But when there's only 9 shows a summer, it's very difficult to satisfy everybody. And we've just been really lucky. I mean, you mentioned Duran. I mean, Duran, it was so good on Sunday. I mean, I was chatting with them afterwards, and I said to Nick Rhodes, I said, there's certain bands who just are part of this, okay? Where the fans come out for this show in their droves, may not go on a tour, may not go to touring events as much, but they want to come here and see Duran Duran play Hyde Park. And you see that in the enjoyment. They get down here so early. The lineup, what we had, everybody you wanted. It's one of the best lineups I think we've ever had at Hyde Park. When you think about, Groove Armada, going into Chic Nile Rodgers, going into Scissor Sisters it's an incredible day of music. And I think that's what makes these events what they are. And so that was, and we booked that show quite late compared to where we would normally do it. And it still did, amazingly well. So it's those opportunities that, if everything was booked last July, we probably wouldn't have done Duran. And I'm so glad we did. So I think it's a really, really strong summer. There'll be 500,000 people coming to BST Hyde Park this year. I mean, it's incredible numbers when you look at it. So yeah, it's been harder, but that's just the cycles of the business.
Of course. Yeah.
All Points East for us this year is the strongest it's ever been. It's depending on which time of the summer when artist cycles are working and when they're working. So I think Glastonbury has some impact as well. I think some artists come in for that weekend, and that's their European anchor. Did they go off as well? So I think naturally that creates a different marketplace. I think the World Cup has that. There's a lack of stadium availability in the major markets for obvious reasons in North America. So I think there's still a lot of artists touring stadiums. You're going to look how strong London's been this summer. But it certainly, creates less one-offs, which Hyde Park is not just a stadium cycle. We don't fit normally just in a stadium cycle. A lot of the artists who come here to play a one-off show or a shorter run of dates, and sometimes that includes Glastonbury as well.
So next year for BST and Roundhay, I know you're not going to tell me the artist, but I mean, in terms of where you're at now, are you feeling really strong and really confident about kind of what you've got?
I know we have 9 other artists who want to fill the 5 other shows. So, and they're all incredible, artists who are, leading in their genres and some of the biggest artists in the world. So I think 27 is going to be particularly strong. I think it'll be a strong market next year anyway. For major events, I think we have to be careful. Money is still tight at the moment. The cost of living, we've got to be very respectful of that. I think people will still go out for the value shows which they want to go to.
And when it comes to Roundhay, I'm sure it's a similar sort of situation with that. But I just wanted to sort of drill into Roundhay a little bit more, because it's a really impressive. It's the biggest launch in the UK of the year for new festival. Leeds has obviously got Melvin's, very long-standing event up there, but it's for a slightly different demographic. So, and obviously that site's got, a lot of history, a lot of heritage in terms of putting on, the world's biggest artist there. And as we talked earlier on, and I've seen the images, I haven't actually managed to experience it yet myself. I'm looking forward to experiencing it, but it looks like a stunning natural amphitheatre. So all the kind of ingredients are there. What's your kind of long-term vision, I guess, for it? Are you looking to kind of grow the capacity? Is there a certain size that's the sweet spot for you? How do you see it, and how do you see it sort of panning out, really?
Well, we had over 40,000 people a day on Pitbull and Lewis, and with all things orchestral there as well, which is a very important part of what we do here in the classical music. So well over 100,000 people came across that weekend year one, which is incredible. I mean, that exceeded our expectations. It's always difficult to launch a new event because you're selling the event as well as the artist. So and it's not always 1 + 1 = 2. So so it's launched really, really well. I think the cap there is over 60,000 people. It used to be more than that. If you remember back in the day, I think it's 85,000 people going there. I don't think we'll look to go to those numbers. I think the marketplace is very different than it was 35, 40 years ago. I love the 45 to 55 kind of number there. I think this is the way and bear in mind, we're not just doing single stage concerts. We want people to move around the different parts of the site, much as they do here as well. And there's a different audience dynamic with that, as opposed to turning up at 6 o'clock, grabbing 2 beers, getting your spot on the hill and just watching the headline artists when they come at 8 o'clock, whatever time it would be. So we are going for a different vibe there, a different event setup. But I think it works brilliantly, and we just saw it work amazingly last week in that 45 to 55 category, and we'll see where we feel we can take it. I think that's a great number anyway regionally. It's kind of in that kind of stadium capacity as well, which is a comfortable capacity for most artists to want to take on. So I think the main building blocks of that show are already set out. We've just got to keep going now and see where we end up.
Yeah, I mean, ideally, would you look at doing? Obviously, BST's gone from 6 shows to 9 shows. Clearly, would you like that to be? Do you think there's room for that to be kind of 2 weekends, Roundhay?
The plan is for it to be able to do that.
Yeah,
but it will be 2 shows, 4 shows, 6 shows, depending on which artists want to do it. We want to make sure that we keep the quality of those artists in, and obviously we're booking across these 2 shows. For to make it rewarding for the artist and to give fans in the north the chance to see the same artist they see in London, not having to come to Hyde Park. So but it will be the number of it won't go more than 6 shows across 2 weekends. That's what we're working to, but we also won't chase 6. It will be the number that's the right number based on the quality and artists that we can get for that particular window. So certainly it will be 3 or 4 shows next year. It will be 6 if that caliber of artist is there, but it's certainly not prerequisite that we have to chase it.
And in terms of the sort of wider, obviously your kind of European perspective with the role, obviously at AEG, you launched Lido this last year. You launched Roundhay this year. It's been there's the Forwards Festival. It's relatively new down in Bristol. It's been really positive watching, the business kind of expand and with these really high quality events that I've enjoyed attending, to be quite frank. But on, your wider perspective in terms of what's happening in Europe, I mean, is there anything coming down the line in terms of new festival launches elsewhere?
Well, we just bought a stake in We Love Green Festival in Paris, which is a long-standing event there. We've been tracking and following that for many, many years, and hugely respectful of what those guys have achieved over the years. I think, AEG doesn't, we like originating more than acquiring. And we do both, by the way, but we're not out there, venture capital back, just trying to, aggregate a volume of festivals together. There's nothing wrong with that, by the way, but that's not our model. And we have traditionally been originators and creators of events. But at the same time, we are looking to grow those network events in the right way, which is the reason why I moved All Points East when we bought Rock on Seine. moved so it sits alongside it. It's the reason why we then originated Forwards with partners Team Love to put those as a 3-show run, which artists can go between. And with Lido being at the front end of the summer, we wanted to be part of that June run of shows. The Primavera is obviously a major event. We're hugely respectful of that event and its quality, and its appeal to artists to come in and play there. And the sharing of talent is, commercially extremely important, and the ability for We Love Green to sit in that window alongside Primavera and then Lido or just any events that we're doing at Victoria Park in June, it just forms a very strong routing for artists to come and look at. So there's a strategic reason for us expanding. Obviously we want to be a bigger business. We want to have stronger revenues from that. But they need to be strategic reasons as well. And they all fit together. There's a routing strategy that works. There's a booking strategy that works with our global partnerships teams in terms of sponsorship. So, we're not in a rush. We like to do things when they need to be done and not before.
So there's nothing new in the pipeline you can tell me about right now?
We'll always be looking at it. No, I'm not trying to be cute about it. I mean, we'll always be looking at things. And, we have new offices in Germany. We have offices in France already. So it makes sense why we're building a business out there with Arno and his team. We have offices in Germany with M.I.C.E. We have new offices in Norway and Scandinavia. That, again, strategic build out of our European footprint is not going to stop. So, that's an ongoing strategy, which, others will talk about in more detail than myself. But we would then always look for opportunities around those businesses. Festivals is something which I think AEG does particularly well. In North America and in Europe and in Australia with Frontier, with our operation down there. It's an obvious go-to point for us to consider, when we're looking to either set up a new office or grow it. Okay, what's our outdoor plan? What's our outdoor strategy as part of this, alongside our domestic touring and our global touring opportunities?
Lovely. Okay. And I just wanted to touch on independent festivals, because obviously, we were talking about their importance earlier on with, Rob and Josie kind of coming to you with bits of paper and a pub or wherever it was, and crazy little sketches on. But that blossoming creativity, that sort of fresh approach is sometimes really needed when it comes to kind of launching new events. And you've kind of obviously come through that whole kind of pipeline, if you like. And so the key, aren't they, really? And I know AEG has been supportive of the Live Trust, which is obviously giving pound a ticket to per ticket sold to various different aspects of the grassroots ecosystem, including festivals. But ultimately for you, how concerned are you by reports that, there's continual closures of independent festivals, and how important do you kind of see that they are?
Well, as you mentioned, as we've talked to, I came from being an independent, and so I value it highly. And you said about pulling up pieces of paper. I'm still doing that. We talked about the ones, that's how the Great Oak Stage came about. So that, a lot of people who work for us here all came from the independent sector. It's more important than it's ever been for that, because without it, I think, like, you go back to the concerns I had before, which is that homogenous kind of output, which I think will be the death of our industry. And you've got to remember that the UK festival industry is the jewel in the global in the global economy for festivals. We do it better than anybody here. And I say that with, I think Coachella for me is the best in the world. I don't say that lightly when some of the other ones on the list, but if you look at the volume of shows that we have in this country and all their different types, I think, we're leaders in the world for it. So, and that comes from the independent sector. And I think, so it's a great concern when you see so many over the last couple of years. It's certainly in the hundreds now, isn't it, that have gone out, and mostly a lot of grassroots, a lot of community-based stuff. But there's realities that can't be changed, and then there are areas which are in our control. And the realities of shows, look, lots of things have sell by date. Okay. We all do as individuals or as operators, and so does sometimes a show or an idea. So there's naturally going to be a churn of certain shows. I think the acceleration of that is the concern. The turnover of those shows leaving the industry and not many coming back in is the bigger concern for me. I think the barriers to come in, and sorry, and I'm not speaking lightly of those who've struggled, by the way, and unfortunately left the business. All I'm saying is the difficulty of new ones coming in, I think is a particular concern to me. I think the barrier to entry, mostly financial, as well as just from the operating challenges, not just from the financial, but the cost of operating, but just challenges of actually doing these events now is so high that I think people, why would you come in? Why would you come in and risk so much money on something which you're probably, not going to break even on for 2 to 4 years, if ever? And many of these are going to still be a labor of love, even at that point. And you're going to be working year to year on, surviving. So it's not a smart business really to go into if you look at it on that basis as an independent. So, but that's either a comma or a full stop. And if we treat that as a full stop, then we might as well just go, okay, we're going to have a declining industry because nothing's going to come in. If we treat it as a comma and go, okay, well, how do we make it better? And there's many, many ways in which we can make it better. And that's the challenge that I think we have to meet. And I don't think it's just about, I'm hugely respectful of the work that the Venue Trust and others in the live sector are doing. And I think that's required. And we can talk about venues separately to this. But from the festival side, there are many, many initiatives which I think can be brought in. And that's from inside the industry, such as things you're just mentioning, but also from the outside. We have to talk about rights holder societies. We have to talk about PRS, not aggressively. Without writers, there's no music. Without music, there's no performers. Without performers, there's no live event industry. So that's a hugely important part of the ecosystem which we have. I think it should be softer for people coming into the business. I think it should be a lot softer for certain sectors of scale, if you like, of the outdoor side of things, to allow them to stand a chance to survive those first year, 2 years, 3 years. Because if you look at that for one reason, if you look at the PRS revenues, I mean, you can look at these, they're enormous. And the growth in that in the last 20 years mirrors in many ways the growth of live music industry, because there's so much PRS revenue that comes from that. And it would be, I'd find it a bit foolish to risk that growth pattern. And it only grows if new events come in, if those new events then survive and they become bigger events and their gate receipts are bigger, and then the PRS contributions are naturally bigger because it's prorated from that. So for me, it just makes sense that, and that's just one area, and that's a part of the music, live music family, and it's part of our industry where we can be more aggressive about how we can help the first, say, 3 years of anybody coming into the industry. And so I think that's one part of it. I think our taxation system and structures is wrong. If you look at, see, I'm going to say that because I'm advocating for our own industry here, but if you look at comparisons with other markets in Europe, the equivalent of VAT in some cases is half, if not even less. I think that would make a dramatic difference. And again, can be scaled, can be the whole industry. If we want to do that, well, that would be great. But it can be progressive in terms of those advantages, which be it the VAT structure or just corporation tax or any of the other business taxes that we have, can be progressive on their way through to encourage people to come in and start a new idea, to encourage us. It's expensive for a big company like AEG to go out and take this risk on. We really want to do that, something of this scale. We've got all of this elsewhere, first 2 years, do we really want to post big losses whilst we develop it? There's no real incentive for us to do that, apart from the fact that we are very fortunate. I have a very good owner and I have a very good boss who'll back us in the longer term, okay? And not everyone has that luxury. So I think, we should be a much softer tax system for the live, certainly the outdoor business, because of the cost of operating here versus going into a theatre, arena or stadium. And I think our rights societies should be, performing societies should review how they structure their tariffs on new business.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, do you feel like they're very good points? And do you feel like the live industry is collectively making those good points loudly enough and effectively enough?
I think that we, for the first time in a long time, have got a good trade body, and I think that's there. I think they're doing their best, pitching the arguments they can to, unfortunately, a lot of stakeholders who don't want to listen. So it's certainly not an overnight approach which they need to take or are taking, but the fact that we have a persistent and consistent industry voice coming through can only be a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We all need to play a role in making that voice louder and more compelling, and hopefully we'll start seeing more positive reactions to that. I think that's the key. But I think that we've also got to be realistic about what we can achieve. I think that's from the venue side of things as well as the outdoor side of things. I think there is a genuine need to protect the culture of our venue business. To lose historic venues is, it's a sin when you think about it. This is where these amazing artists started out their career in this wonderful old building, and it's going to ruin because it can't work here. I mean, that's crazy. We should be protecting. That's part of our heritage, part of our culture. And you wouldn't see that for many other cultural industries, be it classical or ballet or many of these other areas, museums even, etc. And we have to do that the same with our music venues. But I don't think that's then a sort of free pass for everybody. If it's a bad business, it's a bad business. I think there's a difference between the two. I think there are businesses which suffering and with some help will become good businesses, and we should be helping those businesses with everything we can, because they will grow and they will be an important part of the future of this industry. And similarly, I think we have an obligation, a moral obligation, to ensure that historical venues and buildings are protected for as long as they possibly can be.
I just wanted to just last question for you, but it kind of ties in really your whole career path and the fact there wasn't a school for how to become the next Jim King. You kind of learn over the years to get to where you are now. And in the sort of referencing that point about, it's probably harder than ever for a young independent wannabe festival promoter to get a business off the ground and survive those first couple of years where they're going to be, or at least a couple of years where they're no doubt going to be losing money. If I happen to be young, I happen to be wanting to get into the festival industry as a producer promoter, what would be the one or two pieces of key advice that you'd give me?
Well, I think that if there had been a school, I wouldn't have made as many mistakes as I've made over the last 30 years. But I mean, but the beauty of that is I've been allowed to make mistakes, in this industry. And it was very different 30 years ago, 20 years ago even. And, even when we were doing Creamfields for the first time, we were able to just to go at it. We were fearless, really. We didn't have we didn't really care if we failed at that point. We didn't think we were going to fail, by the way. We were not arrogant about it, but certainly fearless in our approach. And, we're very confident that, we were going to go at this and we were going to make it a success. And, we did. And but look, anybody trying to get involved in this, we work with many great independent operators. We work with Team Love down in Bristol. They're our partners down there. We work with the Outbreak guys, who come work with us at All Points East. There's some really good young businesses, young promoters, young show producers who have managed to, survive for 10, 15 years, or even the last 2 years, or whatever it might be. And they're making, not just great events, but they're actually making stronger business from that. So I think there are a lot more successes out there than perhaps people think. But the key is to, you have to have a passion, and you've got to be creative, and you've got to have a vision for what you want to do. And then you've got to work with good people. I've been really fortunate. One of the best parts of my career is the fact I've been able to work with good people. I learned from really good people back in the day when I first started. And many of those things I remember things that people were telling me 25 years ago. I had a meeting with my boss, Jay Marciano, yesterday. I still learning things from there, from that meeting. And I think that's critical. Surround yourself with good people that you work with or who you work for, and learn. And, if you're smart enough, lucky enough, you'll make your own luck from that, and opportunities will come from it. So, So yeah, that's it. You've got to be in the room. No point sitting on the sidelines and going, if only. Get in the room, go and work with someone good, go and work on a really good event, learn what it takes to do. And that's what I did. I followed Melvin around. He probably didn't know I was following him around at the time, but I was back in 1998 going,
Yeah.
that's how you do that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Brilliant stuff. That's great advice. Thanks for doing this,
All right.
Jim. It's been
Nice
great.
to see you again.
Thank
Yeah?
you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
All right.